Did you know that when we too easily call persons or families or couples good Christians, good Catholics, right? Like, oh, so and so is such a good Catholic, or so and so, they're such a wonderful Catholic couple. They are like role models, or we think of certain families as, oh, they're such wonderful, Christian, such a wonderful Christian family. Sometimes, and I hear this a lot, I see this happening a lot. People just love to sing praises of individuals or couples or families, and we put them on pedestals. I want to really, really caution us from doing this because you don't know what's going on in that person's life. You do not know what's going on in that couple's marriage. You don't know what's going on in that family. I have seen too many, as in really I know firsthand, okay, from the people that I've spoken to, people I've accompanied, and even in just my ordinary life, my observations of families and individuals in my life, all my life, that in many, many cases, what you think is a good Catholic family, the parents you're singing praises of, they could be the perpetrators of emotional abuse, spiritual abuse in their families, and you know what? Their children feel trapped. And the higher profile the parents are, the more their parents are praised because they are pillars of a community, maybe because they're very generous with donating to good causes to the church, the more trapped the children will feel. Because who can they go to? They could be suffering at home, but who are they going to speak to? Are they going to speak to their pastor, their priest, the very same priests or pastors who are telling them what wonderful parents they have? Think again, right? And then at the same time, because this has something to do with the faith or the community of faith that they belong to, this does something really, really bad to the person. Okay, it's really traumatizing. You're trapped alone. You don't know who you can talk to. There may not be safe adults that can speak to because everybody, has been telling you your whole life what wonderful examples of virtue or being Christian or Catholic your parents are. If you are, even if you're not a child or a youth, and you're an adult and you're in a marriage, and you get put on that kind of a pedestal, and people tell you how wonderful you and your husband or you and your wife are, or you end up having to live up to that persona of being that role model kind of like couple. A lot of times these couples are really struggling. They are so busy trying to keep up that facade and the persona of being the very available couple who are always serving in ministry together or leading the community together. They actually may not have the capacity and the ability to work on their issues and their wounds because the appearance becomes more important than the essence, than actually what is happening. It's tough. Don't blame them. I mean, think of it. We make it so much harder for them because we keep reinforcing that they are role models, right? On January 31st, the full report on the case of Jean Vanier, who was the founder of L'Arche, an international organization that they create these communities for the mentally handicapped. Right, the founder's name is Jean Vanier. He is somebody that was very widely admired and respected, both in the Catholic Church and also in the secular world. He was seen as a humanitarian, and as it turns out, after his death, it was revealed that he was part of a kind of like a cult that was sex abuse involved, there was high degrees of control involved, all kind of deviant, strange things going on, right? And he was not even the main. He's not the person that started it. His mentor, a French Dominican priest, right, had actually begun that. And the report is chilling if you read it. I haven't had time to read it in full, but I've caught certain sessions, and I have friends who are reading it and send me, their thoughts and send me kind of like sections of it. And what's appalling is that Jean Vanier is he is exactly what people would think of as a good Catholic boy. And that phrase actually is in the report. The family is an upstanding family, right? Well looked upon, devout in their faith, loyal to country. They have a history of family service. But if you look a little closer, there are clear patterns of dysfunctional, maybe enmeshment between Jean Vanier and his mother. The dynamics that the mother has with Jean Vanier's mentor, the person who actually founded the cult. There are a lot of things. I mean, this is an extreme example, but I think it does us a great disservice when we look at something like this that's blown up, so big. Jean Vanier was somebody a lot of people considered a living saint. And it turns out he was abusive. There was great evil that he was perpetrating. In fact, the report reveals that L'Arche was actually founded as a means for the cult to continue to meet. It wasn't even a response to the call from God that Jean Vanier had claimed it was. So many had been deceived by him, including some of his closest collaborators. Now, I was saying, I think it does us a great disservice if we think this is a one-off or this is just a caution against personality cult. I think underlying such a phenomenon is something a lot more mundane, a lot more everyday, and something that's happening in our communities, in our parishes, in all our churches. We are broken, and there are many lives and many families and many marriages that need help. And a lot of this has come from generational trauma, intergenerational trauma. A lot of wrong and evil that are being perpetrated is not necessarily coming out of malice, but because people are in the grips of, what they call generation after generation of trauma and trauma responses. And there's just so much pain. And just because we have certain ideas of what role models should look like. This isn't even just necessary in a religious context, right? I mean, even in a cultural context, as an Asian, we have certain ideas of what it looks like to be, a good family, a good parent, or a good child. And sometimes we're very quick to praise and to put people on pedestals. And we don't know how much pain is in their lives and in their families. And by doing so, we could be trapping them from getting help, because it just makes it all the more shameful when you have to live up to a certain persona and then to admit that not only do you not have your act together, you really need help. We are trapping their spouses, we are trapping their children, and especially the children, the young people. They are helpless. They're not even they're not adults yet. And can you imagine if you don't know where to go for help because the people that you're supposed to be able to go for help think the world of the people who are harming you, and you don't even know whether it is okay to be honest. And sometimes with these young people, and I know this from experience, even if you ask them point blank, are they okay? Are things okay at home? They're going to look at you in the eye and lie because they are loyal, or they know that family loyalty has been drilled into them. Right? And they don't want to make the parents lose face. I mean, even if their parents have been hurting you or the situation in your family is hurting you, right? So the parents may not be hurting the children directly, but let's say the marriage is very toxic and there's maybe some physical violence and there's a lot of conflict at home. That's hurting the children. Out of loyalty to their parents and the need to belong to the family, they're not going to necessarily raise their voice and ask for help. And this culture that we have of just liking, this tendency to label certain appearances and behaviors as virtuous, as being good Christians, and as being wonderful. I just think we should be very cautious about doing that. I know that those of us who do that, we don't mean any ill. We don't know any better. But seriously, there are so many things going on underneath the surface that we don't know and we don't see. And I am pleading on behalf of those who suffer in silence, who suffer invisibly. Let's stop putting people, couples, and families parents on pedestals.